Early on in my D&D career, back when I was a wee baby DM building my first homebrew campaign, I found myself struggling with combat balance. Some fights seemed to be over in 2 rounds when they were supposed to last 5, and other fights that were supposed to be a layup for the party almost TPK'd them. Now, I was using encounter balancing tools, I was calculating XP thresholds, and I was selecting monsters as best I could, but I still couldn't get a handle on making my combats work. I knew I wasn't alone in this, so I went looking for a solution. As I dug around forums, subreddits, and even a couple Discord servers, I found one term getting thrown around again and again: action economy. But what is action economy? How can we as DMs use it when preparing combat encounters? And most importantly, is it worth using? Hello again, everyone. I'm Bill, admin and instructor over on Altroll, and today I want to examine what action economy is and how players and dungeon masters can use it to make combats more balanced and more engaging. Action economy is an overarching term used by the D&D community to refer to the number of things a character or monster can do in one round of combat. As D&D players, we want to maximize the impact of our combat turns in productive ways by doing things like damaging our foes, minimizing damage to allies, or healing back lost health. In the greater action economy of the game, we are spending our actions, bonus actions, and reactions to do these things. So overall, action economy helps us define how our movement, actions, bonus actions, reactions, and free object interactions allow our character to contribute to combat. For example, let's say a creature enters and then willingly leaves my threatened area, which is the reach of my melee weapon. Per the rules of the game, I am now allowed to make an attack of opportunity, but taking that reaction is a choice, one that I can say no to. At that moment, I am choosing whether or not to spend my reaction to potentially deal some damage to this enemy. I might choose to do so, or I might save my reaction in case I need to use it for something else that would have more of an impact on combat before the start of my next turn. Now, not all characters are going to start with options like these. As we level up, we gain new feats, class features, subclass features, and spells to improve our impact on the action economy. One popular example of this would be the fighter's Action Surge ability, gained at level 2, which lets the fighter take 1 additional action on their turn once per rest. Gaining the ability to do 2 actions in 1 turn adds to the fighter's action economy, allowing them to attack multiple times or mix in other actions, such as drinking a potion, dashing, or disengaging before moving. However, debuffs from conditions or enemy spells can lower our impact on the action economy as well. The incapacitated condition, for example, removes the ability to take actions or reactions in combat, severely hampering a creature's ability to have any sort of impact. If one member of a party were incapacitated, they'd be effectively useless during that combat encounter until they were cured, thus not contributing to the action economy. So we've been talking a lot about an individual's impact on the action economy, but D&D is not a solo game. While each person in an adventuring party has their own impact on the action economy, all of their individual impacts can work together to form a collective party impact. If understood correctly, this collective action economy can be used by the party to strategize with each other during combat, and by the DM to balance combat with all the party members taken into account. For example, a level 5 sorcerer can take the Haste spell, which doubles a chosen creature's speed, adds +2 to their armor class, grants advantage on dexterity saving throws, and allows the creature to do an additional weapon attack, dash, disengage, hide, or use an object action. If Haste is cast on a level 5 fighter who already has Action Surge and extra attack, that level 5 fighter on their turn can do 5 attacks, dealing around 40 to 50 damage on average with a greatsword. To put into context how much damage that truly is, a challenge rating 6 Wyvern has 110 hit points on average, so that's a little over 1/3 of its total hit points gone from using one spell and one class ability to buff up a character's actions within the action economy. So as you can see, with a proper understanding of the action economy, a smart party of players can take down legendary monsters easily and quickly. So we've gone over how understanding the basics of action economy can benefit players, but understanding action economy can be beneficial to dungeon masters as well. When we look at the monsters we use in combat, especially those with lower challenge ratings, we can often see that they have very little going on mechanics-wise. Most stat blocks only list a monster's movement, some basic actions they can do to attack, and inherently have some reactions through things like opportunity attacks. For most situations, this is fine though, because we're going to be throwing a big group of these monsters at the party, and their greater numbers outweigh the player-oriented action economy. For example, if we have a party of 4 going in to face a group of bandits, 4 characters versus 1 bandit is laughably easy. The party has 4 actions, maybe some useful bonus actions depending on their level and class, and 4 reactions, whereas the bandit, according to their stat block, has 1 action and 1 reaction. So, 1 player in the party has 3 different things that they can do, whereas the bandit only has 2. However, we can just keep sprinkling in more bandits until we feel like the party and the monsters are matched in how much they can do on their turns. So if we increase the number of bandits to around 6, this should begin to even the odds in terms of the action economy. So when it comes to group fights, we can just keep adding more monsters until we think the fight might be balanced. But what if we want our players to be in a big all versus one battle for the sake of the story? Maybe we want our campaign to end in a climactic boss battle, or we want the big bad evil guy to show just how powerful they are by taking on the party with none of their minions. Normally, since it would be multiple party members versus one monster, the party would easily be able to overpower monsters of equal power rating due to the action economy being imbalanced, which normally forces DMs to grab monsters that are way more powerful than the party just to stand a chance against them. However, there are a couple things built into the source books that we can use to make these boss battles feel powerful for the story, but also be balanced mechanically: legendary and lair actions. In the monster manual, certain creatures are deemed legendary creatures, such as beholders, adult dragons, and of course the kraken. Due to their immense power as these legendary creatures, they can do special actions such as legendary actions and lair actions. Legendary actions are essentially special actions the monster gets to do in between other players' turns. These can be things that the monster can normally do, such as one of their attacks, or special moves that they can only do during one of these legendary actions. Legendary monsters have a limited number of legendary actions they can use per round of combat, but they can only do one action at a time. Spent legendary action uses are regained at the start of the monster's turn. So, for example, in an initiative order such as this, with a party of 4 fighting an adult red dragon, player A will go first, then player B, then the dragon, then players C and D, and then the round will reset. With legendary actions, after player A's turn, but before player B's turn, the DM can have the dragon use one of their legendary actions, such as making a tail action, a perception check, or making a wing attack. Once the legendary action is done, player B's turn will begin. Lair actions, on the other hand, are special moves that take advantage of the ambient magic within a legendary creature's lair, making the legendary creature more powerful when in their lair and allowing them to use a free action on initiative count 20. So, using that same example again, since player B rolled a 21 and the dragon rolled an 18, the lair action would happen after player B's turn, but before the dragon's turn. Lair actions, like legendary actions, will depend on the monster being used, but they can have different environmental effects based on what the monster is. The adult red dragon, for example, can cause magma or sulfuric gas to erupt and damage the party, or create tremors that can knock the party prone through a failed dexterity saving throw. So on specific monsters, we have these cool legendary and lair actions that we can use to spice up boss battles against them without having to clutter the battle map with annoying minions. But what if your party isn't facing one of the monsters predetermined to be legendary? My party's only level 3. I don't want them to have to fight an aboleth just so I can use legendary or lair actions. What do we do when the monsters we want to use don't come with legendary or lair actions? Well, we make our own. Adding legendary or lair actions onto a monster is going to be very subjective, as every DM will have different ideas for what they might want to do with a monster. However, there's a few things we'll need to examine in order to come up with them. Mainly, we'll need to examine what actions the creature has normally, what fits the creature's lore, and what terrain that creature is normally in. Now, for more in-depth breakdowns of monsters that answer these questions in detail, we of course have our Monster Breakdown series that we're adding more monsters to. So if you want to check out our first episode in that series, it'll be featured at the end of the video. But for now, let's just take a look at a quick example. For this example, let's say the party has been hired to destroy an orc war camp as it's been raiding nearby trade routes. After navigating through the jungle, the party fights their way through the camp to the chieftain's tent, and out walks an orc war chief. This will be the monster we'll be adding the legendary and lair actions to. Let's start with analyzing the creature's stat block. The orc war chief is a challenge rating 4 monster that has 16 armor class, 93 hit points on average, a bonus action movement ability, multi-attack with some powerful melee and thrown weapon options, and a once per day battle cry to buff nearby allies and give the war chief a bonus action attack. So in summary, the orc war chief is a beefy boy who can tank a lot of hits, hits back even harder, and buffs up his allies with a war cry that lets him hit even more. So as we're looking at this stat block for legendary action inspiration, the easiest thing to implement into a legendary action is simply one of its normal attack actions. So we could have one legendary action be for the orc war chief to make a great axe attack or throw a spear, each of which could cost one legendary action. The war chief has a third action listed though, and it's an action that can only be used once per day: Battle Cry. Each creature of the war chief's choice that is within 30 feet of it can hear it, and not already affected by Battle Cry, gain advantage on attack rolls until the start of the war chief's next turn. The war chief can then make one attack as a bonus action. To me, this seems like a perfect candidate for a legendary action, but it can be very powerful if it's done too often. So, we'd want to restrict this ability from being used normally on the war chief's turn, and then set the cost of this legendary action to use 2 actions. If we set a standard limit of 3 legendary actions per round on the orc war chief, that means he can either make 3 extra attacks as legendary actions, or make 1 attack and 1 battle cry, which brings him back into balance. So that's the easy way to make legendary actions. Take what the stat block already gives you and repurpose it into legendary actions. But if you want to take your knowledge of a monster a step further, then you can create your own unique legendary actions on the fly as well. So let's say I didn't turn Battlecry into a legendary action, and I kept it as a once per day action that the Orc Warchief can use. But I really like the idea of the Orc Warchief letting out a cry or a wah to rally the other orcs into combat. If I wanted this chieftain to be able to summon his minions to maximize the effect of his battle cry, I could add in a legendary action, Wah, which allows the Orc Warchief to use 2 legendary actions to summon 1d4 orcs as reinforcement waves at the edge of the battle map. Now my chieftain has this cool ability to summon his underlings to fight for him, and he still has that once per day ability to buff up these minions with his battle cry. This is of course just one example, and I'm sure there's many more unique abilities that you could give the Orc Warchief that fit the aesthetic of what this creature is going for. But that's just one way to create a completely new legendary action for a creature just by using its existing stats and lore as inspiration. We've established legendary actions for the Orc Warchief, so to finish up here, let's showcase how to create a Lair action. Lair actions typically give the DM 3 different environmental effects to use that fit the aesthetic of the creature. The Orc Warchief's lair, at least in our example, is a raiding camp. So let's think of 3 potential action options we can have this lair do as lair actions. Some ideas could be things like war drums causing a wisdom saving throw or becoming deafened, the smoke of nearby bonfires temporarily filling the camp and lowering visibility, or the chanting of Grumsh inspiring all orcs on the battlefield to gain 1d6 temporary hit points. With these examples, we now have a choice between 3 different effects on initiative count 20 to potentially hinder the party further during their boss battle. These are just a few examples, but don't be afraid to plumb the depths of your imagination to come up with fun effects that can make boss battles more interesting through the environment that they're fought in. To summarize the tools a DM has to balance action economy, monsters, especially lower challenge rating ones, rely on outnumbering the party to account for the fact that they have fewer actions and bonus actions. For single boss fights, DMs can use legendary and lair actions to give the boss more actions in a round without having to add in a bunch of minions. Legendary actions happen in between player turns to let a boss monster have more actions in the action economy against the party. Lair actions give 1 free action on initiative turn 20 to allow the boss to use their home environment to their benefit. And finally, if legendary or lair actions aren't provided for the monster you want to use, you can create your own using the existing actions or lore of the creature. With these tools in mind, DMs can use the action economy of the game to not only balance group fights better, but make single monster encounters more interesting and dangerous for the party without having to use outlandishly overpowered monsters. Now, if you want to learn more about how to modify monsters to be more action-oriented, I highly recommend watching Matt Colville's video titled Action-Oriented Monsters, which is going to be linked in the description down below. This video goes into a lot more depth than we do here, and it's what helped me get started when I was a newer DM. So that's action economy in a nutshell. A way of understanding how the different actions, turns, and rounds of combat are balanced between one another and can be used to make combats feel more balanced, fair, and most important of all, fun. So what I want to know now is, how do you feel about action economy? Are you going to use it to create more single monster encounters for your players? Or are you going to use it as a player to create a plan with the rest of your party to kill the big bad evil guy in 2 rounds of combat? You can let me know in the comments below, or talk about it on the Alt-Roll Discord, which is going to be linked in the description. While on the server, you can pop into the courses we run teaching all the basics to D&D, and if you like what we do, supporting us on our Ko-fi goes a long way in helping us keep Alt-Roll going. Finally, if there's a D&D concept you're struggling with and you'd like it broken down in this style, feel free to let me know in the comments or over on the Discord, and I'd be happy to get a video together explaining it in the best way I can. However, that is all I had for you today. Thank you all so much for your time. Make sure to have a great rest of your day, and I'll see all of you next time.